it's a completely different experience than what I thought it was going to be.
Today we have a challenge for you, so make sure you stick around to the very end. Previously, we've shared that a group of students and mentors went to Spain to hike or be pilgrims on the Camino. I'm Kyle Hyman, here from Mac Studios, and I love hiking. If you like hiking, go ahead and press the thumbs up button so that your vote gets registered. And if you want to make us feel special, you can hit the subscribe button as well. Today, Dr. Jo Meier-Marquis shares about her journey and the hiccups that were from the very beginning planning this trip and how she almost didn't even go.
Dr. Balderas and I started planning this trip pre-COVID, and we're ready. We had a roster of students who wanted to go. We had everything planned, and COVID hit, so it was postponed. And then we tried again, thinking surely this weird thing called COVID won't last very long. So we tried again the next year and then realized, no, we're not going to be doing study abroad for a while. We were getting ready to do it again. And then almost 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and my world turned upside down. And I thought, well, a lot of things are going to change for me, and I'm certainly not going to be able to do something like a Camino or even study abroad. So that it really was off my list of things that I wanted to do. And then last fall, Dr. Balderas was like, I think it's time that we do the Camino. And I was like, well, I'm not healthy enough. I'm not well enough. I don't know what's going to happen to me. And in March, we left in May, and in March, I was like, okay, I've got all clear from my doctors, and I'm going to do it. But to say that the meaning of the trip and the significance of the trip changed for me is a gross understatement. Like being able to go on the pilgrimage was such a different experience because of my lived experience with cancer. So I was just really, really filled with gratitude and just being very thankful for being able to be there. So anyway, this was like 5 or 6 years in the making, and it happened in my mind at just the right time.
So she's going. It's going to be great, but she has some apprehension.
So we all landed. Of course, we were sleep deprived. I was incredibly apprehensive about the physical demands of the Camino. I was really in my head about that, and I don't think I was the only one. So I don't think I enjoyed that first day because I was so anxious about starting the Camino. We were starting the Camino the next day, and I had no idea what it was going to be like. And again, did I mention that we were sleep deprived? We were very sleep deprived, and I just want to give a shout out. We worked with a tour group called Marley at Marley's Camino, and it was just phenomenal. And they picked us up in Madrid, and then had everything arranged for us. So it couldn't have been an easier transition. So that part I was also worried about, and that my anxiety was relieved immediately with how well handled everything was. But that first day they took us they took us everywhere. Like, we didn't get back to our accommodations or get to our accommodations until, I don't know, like 8 or 9 at night. And then we had a big dinner. It was a very full day, and I just couldn't wait to go to bed. That's all I kept on thinking of, is when is it bedtime? But I think all the students were contemplating what the next day was going to be like. Not pensive, and just thoughtful. They were very, very thoughtful. I think everybody was wondering the same thing, which is, am I going to be able to handle the amount that we're walking? I think the first day we did 12 kilometers, which was pretty daunting. But then they also greeted us with beautiful scenery. We traveled from Madrid up to our starting point by train, which was really a neat experience. And the food, that was our first day with Spanish food, and it was delightful.
So she's a little unsure about the difficulty of the day by day, but there was something that calmed her and gave her peace.
That evening when we got to our accommodations, Father Eduardo offered Mass in the accommodations. There was actually a chapel there in the accommodations. So that really settled me. I felt great peace in that. And again, I don't think I was alone in that. So I felt like I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be. We had this beautiful bounty of a breakfast, and then they drove us to our starting point, and they were like 12 kilometers today, and we started off. And I think everybody was a little bit jittery within the first hour of walking. I settled down. I really settled down. We were passing through these small little towns. We were getting our passport stamped at different locations. We were having snacks along the way. Actually, that was probably my favorite day. I was always at the end. And I think I found out later that they literally took turns with, like, who stuck with Dr. Joe today in the back. I was a caboose of the train. But the first day, everybody did really, really well. We had a van with us in case anybody needed help, and I was the one who most likely needed help. And the relief that night when we were all gathered for dinner, like, you could feel the relief. Like, everybody, I think, was like, okay, it's going to be difficult, but I personally can do this. And I felt that with all of our students.
This isn't an easy pilgrimage for anyone, much less somebody who's gone through what she has. And she doesn't let that stop her. That's a good reminder for all of us that when something seems new or uncomfortable or difficult, it still could lead to something great. And in fact, sometimes God calls us to do hard things.
I think in April, the students were asking great questions about, like, what's it going to be like? And I was like, I don't know what it's going to be like. So I looked up the kilometers per day, and that's what really got in my head. And I was like, I don't walk this ever. I never walked this much. Even when I was healthy, I didn't walk this much. So I really, really got in my head. And what I figured out once I got there is, oh, you just do it. You just do it, and you're talking to people, and you're seeing the sights, and you're stopping for delicious, Spanish snacks. You don't even notice. Well, you do notice, but it's a completely different experience than what I thought it was going to be.
And so we mentioned in the last episode of the theme of what are you taking with you and what are you leaving behind? And Dr. Meier-Marquis has a very practical thing that she brought back with her from the trip.
I have incorporated more walking in solitude, and when I walk, I pray. And again, for me, it's typically, if everything's going well, it's usually prayers of thanks. So I've definitely brought that back with me, and it gives me great peace, and it also gives me great joy. So I've intentionally continued that since I've returned, and that does allow, it's like a piece of the Camino is still with me because I'm practicing that.
And so she's continued to go for walks and spend time in prayer, especially prayers of thanksgiving. And sometimes it's an experience like the Camino that grabs our attention and helps point out these things that we need to be doing and shakes us from our regular routine. Or we could just learn from her example and implement these things into our own lives. Which leads to our challenge, to take time out of our day for silence. Let's start with 10 minutes of silence and set an alarm too. And go for a walk in quiet, or a drive in quiet, or just sit home, close your eyes. Don't close your eyes if you're walking or driving, but be open to what God might be calling you to. Even if it's intimidating or scary or difficult, to have courage and be open. And join us next time when we hear what happens when the Camino becomes painful. I'm Kyle Hyman from Mac Studios. Until next time, God bless.